Hello, my name is Dr. Brian Graiser. I'm the current president of the Vibraphone project. I'm also the full-time lecturer of percussion at Sam Houston State University. And these are the 14 things that I wish students and their teachers knew about the vibraphone before they get to college. Number 1, it's not a xylophone. Have we not figured this out by now? This is not a xylophone. This is not a xylophone. Xylophone. Not a xylophone. Not a xylophone. Barely even a real instrument. Xylophone. This one has aluminum bars and can ring for a long time. This one has wooden bars and sounds drier than an Arizona summer. It's a dry heat. We're good here? Good. Number 2, it's not a marimba with a pedal. I've seen lots of performers play the vibraphone like a marimba that just so happens to be able to play long notes every now and then. They are two different instruments. They're about as different from each other as the harpsichord is from a piano. That's actually a really good comparison. Here's a word I'd like to throw at you. Articulation. You want short notes? I've got short notes. You want long notes? I've got long notes. You want legato notes? I've got legato notes. That's mallet dampening, by the way. The point is, can a marimba do short notes? Well, okay, yes. But can a marimba do long notes? Not so much. Now, I'm not saying that the vibraphone is a better instrument than the marimba, although I may be thinking it. But it does mean that the vibraphone has more options, and the most irresponsible thing you can do is to ignore these options and just play the vibraphone like a marimba. To play this instrument with any degree of proficiency and expressivity, you need to be aware of the vibraphone-specific techniques that are available to you, such as pedaling and mallet dampening. And by the way, we've already talked about these things in earlier clinic videos from the Vibraphone project, which are still available on our YouTube channel. Number 3, put the wheel locks on when you play. Do you want to hit a moving target? Number 4, loosen the pedal rod anytime you change the vibraphone's height. Do you see how thin this pedal rod is? Do you know how easy it is to bend or break it? Very easy. If you lower the vibraphone and then put all its weight on the pedal rod without loosening the pedal first, it's going to snap faster than Thanos at a jazz concert. Number 5, raise the pedal anytime you move the vibraphone. See previous explanation. Raised door thresholds are the natural enemy of the vibraphone. Number 6, having a motor is not actually always necessary. The vibrato is a really cool and important option to have. It's actually the reason the vibraphone was invented in the first place. But if we're being honest, you can actually survive most vibraphone performances without a motor. If you can afford it, you should get a complete vibraphone with a working motor. But if your budget is preventing you from playing the vibraphone, you should be aware that buying a vibraphone without a motor will save you about $1,000. Number 7, if you do use a motor, make sure you always keep your vibrato rotors lubricated so they don't make any noise, and always bring an extension cord just in case. Because, duh. Also, when you're playing, try not to miss the bars and hit the rotor instead. Besides the fact that it's an embarrassing and ugly sound, you also run the risk of bending the rotor so that it doesn't turn easily or silently. Number 8, just because the vibraphone has a motor and a pedal, it is not a vehicle. You know this. I know this. But there's somebody in your life who doesn't know this, and they need to see this video. Number 9, the pedal shouldn't actually move that much, and it should never touch the ground. Can you drive a car? Can you differentiate between driving 40 and 45 miles per hour? If so, you have no excuse for stomping that pedal onto the ground like there's a cockroach under it who owes you money. Check this out. I'm going to start playing, and I'm going to gradually lower the pedal until the damper pad comes completely off of the bars. Then I'm going to start lifting the pedal back up until the damper pad is completely on the bars. Let's see how much pedaling I actually need to do to go from dry to open and back to dry. So you see, I actually only need about 1 inch of my vibraphone pedal's range of motion for it to do its job. Number 10. You shouldn't release the vibraphone pedal like a springboard either. Didn't we just talk about this? This right here is awful. It sounds bad. It looks bad. It makes me feel bad. It might even lower your credit score. Have you ever had a pedal rod drop? I have. WGI Finals, 2006. And it stinks. You have to stop everything you're doing, get on your hands and knees and fumble around until you can find a way to connect the pedal rod back to the damper bar. Well, guess what? It's totally preventable. Just don't let the pedal spring up and the hook won't pop out. Number 11. It's actually totally okay to play the edges of the accidental and natural bars. Why make your life more complicated than it has to be? If you have an awkward chord to play, you can make it less awkward by playing the inside edges. Or just never play anything that isn't in C major. Number 12. If you have a piston stroke bumper sticker on your car, you're not going to like this one. Playing downstrokes on the vibraphone can actually be really helpful. There are a few good reasons why full rebounding strokes are usually the best option when you're playing the vibraphone or any other keyboard percussion instrument. Getting around the instrument, audience psychology, maintaining the acceleration and therefore the force of my stroke. But the bottom line is that once my mallet leaves the bar, there's nothing I can do to change the sound further without touching it again. I could ribbon dance. It won't make a difference. I'll never be a gymnast. Therefore, if you need to mallet dampen, it can sometimes be really helpful to downstroke so that your mallet head is already close to the bar that it needs to dampen. Number 13. The mallets that you choose really do matter. The Vibraphone Project is a nonprofit organization, so I'm not going to give any specific product endorsements here. But there are a few things that I do consider when I choose what mallet to use. I personally like mallets wrapped in a softer material like yarn or hemp, as opposed to a harder material, even though it may be more durable. And the reason why I like this is because it helps me to mallet dampen more smoothly and silently. I also like using mallets with rattan handles for the same reason. It makes mallet dampening easier. And I also like using mallets with heavier cores so that I have more mass to work with and then can activate more of the bar's vibrational modes, which then gets me a richer sound. Generally speaking, you're going to want to use harder mallets if you're playing a vibraphone part in a band or orchestra concert, because composers don't always have a good sense of how poorly the vibraphone can cut through a big ensemble. And you may also want to use harder mallets when you're playing jazz. There's actually an interesting story about why we associate harder mallets with jazz vibraphone playing, besides the fact that usually they need to cut through a group. Jazz was the direct descendant of ragtime. You probably already know about how popular ragtime xylophone was during its heyday. It was very popular. But did you ever ask yourself why xylophone was so popular during that era? Part of the reason was this: the ragtime era overlapped with the first big wave of consumer-ready recordings. All of a sudden, you could go home and pop on an Edison record to your home phonograph and have George Hamilton Green playing xylophone rags in your own living room, as opposed to having to travel 3 days to hear him in concert. Now, this early recording technology was nowhere near as good as what we have today. I'm making this whole video on my phone. And the xylophone, which was basically all attack and no tone, was one of the few instruments that translated really well on this early, poor recording technology. The earliest vaudeville and jazz vibraphone players would have known this and would have been thinking about what mallets they were using in terms of how well they translated through recordings. Now, mallets have, on average, gotten a little softer since that time. I mean, just listen to this. But to this day, we still associate harder mallets and drier pedaling with the jazz approach to the vibraphone. Number 14. The 4 mallet grip that you use really does matter. Here come the pitchforks and torches. Look, for every grip out there, there is a world-class professional who is doing really well with it. Burton grip, Stevens grip, cross grip, each of them have their own strengths and weaknesses, and most of those differences have to do with what parts of the technique are easier or harder to learn at the beginning. But the more you work on these grips, regardless of which one you use, the better you'll get at it, and the more it will be able to do for you. You can do pretty much anything you need to do with any of these grips. However, you should let the demands of the music inform which grip you choose to use. If you're playing the vibraphone and there's a decent amount of mallet dampening, which should be the case unless the composer wrote a piece that's basically just for the marimba, but it happens to have half notes and whole notes, you should give some serious thought to which grip best serves you and the music. Lee Stevens himself has admitted that mallet dampening with his grip is not the most comfortable thing in the world. Ow. I actually make a deal with all of my students when we start learning mallet dampening on the vibraphone. I tell them that if they can look me in the eye and swear that Stevens grip is just as comfortable as Burton grip to them when they mallet dampen, I will take them at their word and I will let them use Stevens grip for the rest of the semester. In my 6 years of teaching, not one student has been able to look me in the eye and tell me that. Not one. There are a handful of vibraphone pieces that I would only ever consider using Stevens grip on, although I usually use a modified Burton grip for most of my vibraphone playing. It just depends on the demands of the piece. We could also talk about how on the marimba the accidentals overlap with the naturals, so the vertical wrist position of Stevens grip allows for easier playing of tight chords with accidentals, but on the vibraphone the accidentals are adjacent to the naturals, and therefore Burton grip allows you to make use of additional alternative chord stickings, whatever. The biggest bottom line is this. You're going to get good at whatever you practice. Just make sure that you aren't limiting your options. And that's it. Those are the 14 things that I wish students and their teachers knew about the vibraphone before they get to college.